A few years ago, I reviewed a flex fountain pen from Bluedew, but they've recently come out with a new model. This is the Crystal, and this particular one is the Emerald. And this is a pen that uses a number of different nibs, but the one that we're almost excited about is the wet noodle nib that they have developed. Bluedew have been making wonderful flex pens for a number of years now, and I think this is a really fantastic option and a great development in what they are doing. So they reached out and asked if I would like to review it. I said absolutely I would, so you get to see it here on my channel today. So a big thank you to the team at Bluedew over there. So I would love your support with my channel. The best thing you can do is like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, hype, comment, all that, share it, all that kind of stuff. And please also consider becoming a member of this channel, where for a small monthly fee, you'll get early access to my videos and things like priority comments along the way. But right now, let's talk about the Crystal fountain pen from Bluedew and its fantastic wet noodle nib. So here is the Bluedew Crystal in its, well, packaging, I suppose. It comes in this interesting sort of pen case, which is a nice sort of solid pen case with a magnetic flap. It's a nice sort of quality sort of fake leather kind of product. Nice sort of soft lining, and the pen is in there. It's held in a little elastic loop. This is very nice. This is usable. This is something you can keep and use with this pen or others. It's very good. Here is the pen itself. So let's talk about the parts and features. I'll do a little writing sample and talk about some pros and cons. So starting at the top of the pen, we get this sort of peaked finial. It's kind of rounded. It's not sort of super sharp edges or anything. I really like that. Swells a little bit to the clip band there. The clip here is this sort of teardrop sort of style with a sapphire on the clip, as they say. And then the rest of the cap sort of swells to the center band, which is the same gold color trim. So we'll step down onto the barrel. The barrel tapers all the way down to another gold colored ring, and then the piston turning knob. This is a piston filling fountain pen, which means that it can only use bottled ink. So you dip the pen into a bottle of ink beyond the end of the nib there, and you turn this knob on the end, and the piston runs up and down in the barrel there, and it draws up ink. Lots of videos on how to use that filling system on this channel, so just sort of check one of those out if you're not familiar with that that filling system. So it is a screw cap, and it comes off in about 1 1/4 turns, 1 1/4 to 1 1/2, which is nice. Small step down, once again, sort of rounded edge, so not sharp edges, down onto the threads, which are really smooth. And then the section, which sort of tapers all the way, and then we get the Bluedew wet noodle nib. This is the extra fine version. So what's really interesting about this nib is that it is a stainless steel nib, and it's got some extra cuts in it. So you've got these extra cuts sort of on the side, and then extra cuts down the center of the nib. And what that does is that allows for quite a substantial amount of flex of the nib. Now, can the pen actually handle that much flex? Well, I'm going to do a writing sample, and I'll show you that and some of its sort of limitations. But generally speaking, it's a very flexible, very soft nib. It takes very, very little to get the pen to flex. So just in sort of standard everyday writing, it flexes quite a lot. It has a plastic feed. More about that in the writing sample. And that is the basics of the Bluedew Crystal fountain pen. This is the Emerald version. There are other colors available, and there are other nibs available on this as well. Fine, medium, broad, as well as multiple sort of flex options. As I said, this is the extra fine wet noodle, and this is the most flexible of all of the nibs that come on this particular pen. For the size comparison, here it is alongside the traditional Lamy Safari. You can see it's a little longer there than the Safari. Not by a huge amount, but I would say this is a pretty good size pen Uncapped, it's a little closer in length, but still slightly longer than the Safari. And then when it's capped, it is, once again, just ever so slightly longer than the Lamy Safari. As for the specific dimensions of the Bluedew Crystal fountain pen, it's about 152-ish millimeters when it's capped. It's about 135 when it's uncapped, and it's just over 172 when it's posted. It posts very long. It's a pretty secure post, and I'm quite comfortable posting it, that it posts sort of just beyond the piston turning knob. So it's not going to sort of activate the piston if you turn the cap on the pen when it's posted. But it is quite long like that. The section is about 11.5 millimeters in the middle, and around the top of the cap there at its widest point is about 15 millimeters, and the entire pen weighs 26 grams. So it's a good size pen. I would say this is on the large side of sort of standard fountain pen dimensions. Okay, time for a quick writing sample. I have Clairefontaine 90 GSM paper here, and we have the Bluedew Crystal in Emerald with the extra fine wet Noodle Nib. A couple of little skips there. I will say at the outset, flex writing nibs aren't my forte. I've been using this nib for now 3 weeks. The point of this writing sample today is to give you a demonstration of how it performs in sort of standard writing. I'll show a little bit of the line variation you can expect from it. I'll try and do a little bit of flex writing just to give you an idea, but just to show you a little bit of the performance and my feelings on how this nib actually keeps up. So, I should say the ink here is Pilot. As I said, it's really wet. Even in reverse writing, which is incredibly scratchy, it's still really wet. Sorry, just a bit of a cough. So you can see in that writing sample that, even with no pressure, and that's writing with no pressure, we're already getting substantial line variation. Let's just see it just with no pressure. And then I'll start to increase the pressure just a little bit with a railroad out there. You can see you're getting substantial line variation from no pressure to a significant line variation there. Now, using this little very unscientific, as it was pointed out to me recently, rule chart, I got something around the 0.5 millimeter roughly through to well beyond the 1.5, sort of pushing the 2 millimeter line rule there. So we're getting something like 0.5 millimeters to 2 millimeters. That's pushing it. I wouldn't push it that far. And as I said, I'm not a flex writer. One thing I will say about this pen is it's not designed for quick writing. You see a couple of railroads out there. It's not designed for that. This is an exceptionally wet nib on a simple plastic feed. An ebonite feed would make this pen write perhaps a little more consistency, have slightly better flow, but there's a whole lot of things that sort of go along with that. So if we just now, I'll try and do just a little bit of a flex demonstration.
like in everyday flex sort of writing, that's actually not too bad. I've certainly seen worse. You don't want to push these nibs sort of too fast or too hard, as it can sort of railroad out if the feed isn't keeping up. And that's often a sign of that sort of a plastic feed situation, is that the feed doesn't necessarily always keep up. You hear people swapping out plastic feeds for ebonite feeds on Pilot flex pen or Falcon, but when it is keeping up, I pushed too hard there. It's really nice. What I would say is that a nib like this, it's a pen like this, with a plastic feed, you're not going to get a super, fast flex writing sort of experience. You can get a sort of fairly decent amount of sort of line variation everyday writing, as well as sort of the more sort of fully pushed flex writing there. So I just want to take a second at this point to say that often when writing with a flex nib, it is a great idea to prime the feed a little bit before you write. Just having that extra sort of ink in the feed helps the performance. So you can do that by dipping the nib, or you sort of like twisting the piston down a little bit and allowing, a little bit more ink down into the feed. And the Bluedew website actually has a page that discusses things like ink choices and how to prime the feed, and also a little bit about flex writing technique. So go and check those out if this is a pen you're interested in and want to get a little bit more information. Just want to get you nice and close just to show a little bit of the flex of this nib. So I sort of just railroaded just at the end of that. Let's see. Okay, so it keeps up pretty well for a while, and we are getting quite a lot of line variation there. But let's just see what the snapback is like as well. So, like, as I said, no pressure through to pressure, but that's pretty sort of decent sort of snapback. Okay, so let's talk business. This pen retails in its basic form, depending on the nib you get, for $130. This setup with the wet noodle extra fine nib is $175 US. It's a nice pen. It's got a nice classic design. I like the design. I like the feel of the build. I'll go into all of that in a little bit. With the wet noodle nib, as an everyday writer with a little bit of personality, it's great. So at $175, I think it's a good price if you're realistic about what to expect from this or any modern flex nib. So what are the pros and cons? Okay, cons, it is a little picky with ink. That flex nib is so flexible that if you have the wrong ink in it, it's just not going to perform well. And it's very easy, if you're going to flex it, to get it to railroad, so it flexes out quite quickly. I just think the feed doesn't quite keep up with how wet the nib is and the amount of flex it puts down. So it is just something that you need to be aware of. Pros, it's got a great piston in it. It is a nice pen body. Like, I really like the design. I love the fact that all these, corners are smoothed out, so it's not super sharp. I like the little sapphire style stone in the clip there. I think it's a great classic design, and that's good because it looks like a fountain pen, and sometimes you just want a pen that looks like a fountain pen. But this, as I said, has some of those nice little details that sets it apart. I think the reason for getting this pen is that nib. It is extremely wet, like gushing wet. You saw in the writing sample, it just, even in reverse writing, it is super wet. And that nib is very flexy. So I think if they can think about upgrading the feed or having a ebonite feed version, this is going to be a fantastic flex pen. It already is. It flexes like crazy. It is absolutely a wet noodle. And in everyday writing, it naturally, because of how soft that nib is, gives you beautiful personality to your writing. But you do just have to be a little bit considerate to the pen's limitations in terms of that flex. But generally speaking, lovely pen, fun writer, great, when you get it flexing a little bit, it's fantastic. And there are lots of lovely, lovely details that make this a really lovely pen in the hand. So I think Bluedew are really onto something here. I think they'll keep developing it. I think they'll keep making little changes, to the feed and things like that. I think that it writes very nicely. It's taken me a few weeks to get used to it, but once you get used to it, it kind of really writes beautifully, and gentle flex, and then a little bit extra where you want just a little bit of color and things like that. So I think it's a really interesting pen, and a big thank you once again to the team at Bluedew for sending it out for me to look at. Please like and subscribe, hit the notifications button, and consider becoming a member of this channel. But in the meantime, please enjoy your pens, enjoy writing, and I'll talk to you soon.